Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe Ojeho.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And we are back for another match week review. Last week I was missing Mike a little bit
Yes.
on the recap. It was all by my lonesome, but he is back and we are both ready to dig into some pretty interesting matches this weekend. Quite a few low-ish score lines, but still a lot of action. A couple of red cards that we'll definitely chat about, a couple of big talking points throughout. But yeah, nice to have you back, Mike. Nice to be joined by somebody else, so it's not just me, nagging on for an hour and a half.
Yeah, no, man, you did an amazing job. Did listen back, so it was great. It was great to, yeah, I really missed it. So I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah, well, no, it's great to have two voices on the podcast instead of just one and my inner monologue. But yeah, so we're gonna jump into this match week's games. But before we dive into it, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on Spotify and YouTube to see our visual side. Unfortunately for this episode, didn't have enough time for graphics, but you can still see our lovely faces on it if you want to as well. But let's jump into the first game, which was Halifax against Pacific. A lot going into this match. Halifax still searching for that win. Pacific looking for a little bit of stability after a little bit of a loss in quality after losing Endom to serious injury. And as much hype as was going into this match, we kind of didn't really get much from it. It was a 0-0 affair. The only big thing that happened was in the 53rd minute, Juan Quintana getting a second yellow for getting himself sent off for a second yellow, which I do want to talk about because that was very, very weird and almost a little bit confusing.
It's been a whole weekend of the ball getting it's kicking the ball away or throwing the ball away. It was a whole weekend of that.
Yeah, essentially. It's just some weird yellows here and there being given. But let's start from the beginning. So, as I mentioned, let's start with Halifax because I feel like this match was let's be honest, it was mostly Halifax. This match, it was pretty much a dominant performance from Halifax. They clearly carried out that great momentum that they have against Ottawa, where they played the best football that they played all year. They continued with that into this match, and they looked the better side pretty much the whole way through. And that's even more impressive because they weren't with the likes of Dan Nimick and Thiago because he was injured, Thiago Coimbra because of I believe that suspension. That red card, and then also without Telfer and Rampersand, I think for national team duty. So they were without some of their pretty big players that they were relying on, and they still had a really, really solid performance. They only were just missing that final product, that they were just missing those shooting boots, especially, in the first half. They dominated, I felt like, but it wasn't like they were having a lot of opportunities to score. That really came for me in the second half, where I thought, okay, this is where Halifax are starting to turn the screw. What did you make of Halifax performances in the first half and maybe in the second half?
Yeah, I thought they've looked decent at times this season, like in stages, and struggled getting results. And again, they went into this, and I think they've been improving as the season's gone on, and you can see them improving. But I mean, hear me out, and I want to hear your thoughts as well. If a Halifax player had got sent off, do you think we see goals from both sides? Because as soon as a Pacific player goes off, it's like, yeah, well, we'll just play 4-4-1. We're just going to defend. We don't concede goals. Like, that's it. The game's done. We're just going to see it out. If a Halifax player goes out, Pacific have to attack, and Halifax have got Ferrin and players like that who can just hit on the break. And I'm just thinking from like a complete neutral's point of view, if a Halifax player got sent off instead, we'd have had a much more exciting game.
No, yeah, genuinely, I do think so. I feel like Patrice Geyser and his team are very much like, we're playing the way that we're playing, regardless of how many men on the pitch we have. And so I think it would have definitely been a more end-to-end open game had it not been for Pacific getting the red card instead of Halifax.
Because
So
they
that
just
is a good
couldn't
point.
break them down, could they? And
Mm.
Pacific have done this like throughout the season with 11 men, but you put them in this position, they just go, well, we don't score too many goals anyway. We're just going to continue to make it really difficult for you. And I mean, Halifax tried, and they tried to like credit to produce guys. He did try and make changes in the second half, and he did try to do things to try and spur his team on, but there was something about the Pacific side. Was it? I was watching along, and I'm like, I'm going to get this right. They used literally every single substitute they had that they
I
had
believe
taken
so.
with them.
I believe they took
Like,
absolutely everyone.
yeah. So it just seemed like Halifax were on sort of like they were just destined not to get anything out of this. They were playing against one of those sides. It's like almost like a movie where players just keep dropping down as someone comes in, but they still hold on. And I don't think Halifax did anything wrong throughout this game. It's just Pacific were just really good defensively.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I'm pretty sure, I think Josh Healy mentioned in his Wanderers notes of this match that uh, Halifax had 26 shots in this match, the most by any team in the league so far this season. And I said that in the first half, they didn't have that many opportunities compared to the second one. They still had a lot. They had 10 shots and 3 on target. It's just in the second one, they had 16 shots and 4 on target. So comparatively, it wasn't as much. And it just felt like in the second half, obviously because of the red card, they were a lot more in Pacific's half than in the first one. I'm looking at the possession stats now. In the first half, it was 57% Halifax. The second half, it was 71% Halifax. So very much the red card changed the dynamic of the game. But you're right. It's like the way the Pacific sort of hung on, I think really showed their character, because we had been talking about a little bit of, what were they going to look like without Ndum, because of not only of his presence on the pitch, but his presence as a leader, as stability. He's a cool, calm, collected. You see that in the way that he plays on the ball.
Yeah.
Without him, how is it going to work? And we saw a little bit of shift in that with Pacific, because we saw them go to this back three with Juan Quintana and Amadume, and TMG which was a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so it almost felt like they were already being defensive because they knew that Halifax were going to get at them, and they were waiting to play in transition. And even though Pacific didn't have that many chances, they only had 6 shots and an XG of 0.18. They still had a couple of chances.
Yeah.
Saloof almost got a one from range. Josh Hurt had a really good opportunity to score after like a slick play on the right.
That's right.
With Tirakovenu, who gave the little back heel, but he just missed the target. But again, with Pacific, they didn't have Rion Moore, even though he was back from suspension. They weren't without Rion Moore because of international duty.
Yeah.
And I think Stefan Yates the same. And we've seen him be more of attacking role.
He's been
so
really good.
He's been really good, especially in the attacking third, which is something that we weren't really used to. So were you sort of expecting Pacific to be a little bit going into this match being like, we're sort of playing for a draw because our main attacker isn't there? We know Halifax are going to come at us. Do you think that it kind of went according to the game plan, except for the red card, according to the game plan that Merriman wanted for this one?
I think so, because, I mean, Quintana was really good in the first half. I thought he was really good. And Amadume's stepping up, and he's showing improvements on last year as a player that's he's going to get minutes just because of the injury, especially to Ndom. But, like, they did go with, when we look at that team, and you think, James Merriman loves a 4-3-3. Like, he's not been shy about that. Like, they've got their philosophy as a team and the way they like to set up. But then, and it shocked us at first, like, it shocked me at first. Oh, wow, they're playing with back three. But then you look at actually who's available, and you're like, okay, now I see why they're doing this.
Exactly.
And they were just trying to hit them on the break. They knew that they were missing key players. They had to do something to adapt, because they couldn't go out in the 4-3-3, I don't think, with the team that they had to take with them on the road, like, to be as effective. So I kind of see what they were doing. The second half, obviously, the red card makes a huge difference. but they did look like a team that was going to try and hit Halifax on the break, because you could tell with Halifax are desperate for points and they're going to be aggressive because they've got to do it, especially at home. They've got to be aggressive and be sort of ball dominant and on the front foot, and they've got to be attacking teams because the fans need something. Like you're trailing, like at the bottom of the table, you're trailing Valour, who have been on the road all year. They only just got back, and something needs to be done. And when you go against this team, they've got quality. Like Patrice Geiser's got quality in his team, but that they're not 100% confident. So if you can absorb that and hit them, it seems like what they were looking to do. And the red card just took away some of those attacks that they probably would have had with 11 players.
Yeah, and attacks for Pacific, like dangerous, lethal attacks, are at a premium anyways.
Yes.
So to make them even more defensive, it felt like, oh man, Pacific are just going to be pretty much holding on. And the thing is, they're good enough for that. And I feel like, Eric Lajeunesse had to be put back into center back after Quintana got that red card to play that sort of 4-4-1. Greco Taylor came in, and it felt like, and I was like, I really was impressed by it. I really like, Greco Taylor. I feel like he's done nothing but really good performances for Pacific. And I've been saying for a while, that's the back four that I would want for Pacific. Is Greco Taylor on the left, Eric Lajeunesse, and TMG in the middle, and then Kunle Dadaluk on the right. I think that would be a really solid back four. I know in terms of in possession, it kind of changes things for Pacific, which is probably why, James Merriman, he likes the idea of Kunle Dadaluk running down the right, and so he wants Lajeunesse to tuck into sort of a back three.
Exactly,
it's understandable, but I like the way that they looked in that four back. Obviously, the biggest thing is they didn't have any attack whatsoever, and so it was really difficult for Pacific. But I was really impressed by their resiliency to hold on, and the fact that Pacific defensively still look quite solid, even without Ndum there, and even with 10 men. So I think that'll be a huge boost. And you got to obviously take in consideration Pacific are coming from the complete West Coast to the complete East Coast, and this grueling road trip. To do this road trip, to get a result, to get a point with a red card, showing that you can be defensively, resolute without your biggest defensive signing, the main man that you have at the back. I think James Merriman and Pacific fans will take that every day of the week, even if they didn't get that many attacks going. So I think all in all, pretty decent game from a Pacific point of view, even with the red card. But I mean, let's talk about the red card, because I want to hear your thoughts on it. So Juan Quintana, I wanted to see him play more because he's Colombian, so obviously I'm going to but I kind of had to turn away in embarrassment from that, because you get an initial yellow card for basically, it said dissent, but for throwing the ball away. Not even like throwing the ball away. He threw it just slightly behind the player. It was, and the referee was he's like, no, yellow card. I was like, what are you talking about? Whatever, fine. It happens. We saw what happened with Coimbra. Like Halifax has benefited from it and has suffered from it now. But then a minute and a half later, he gets the second yellow card for seemingly stopping a dangerous counterattack. He kind of body checks. I forget which player it was specifically that he checked.
I can't think of the
but then they keep going and the play continues. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, given that it's a second yellow card, there shouldn't be an advantage, because to what I thought I knew the rules. I might be wrong here. To what I thought, if there's a red card offense, either direct red card or a second yellow, you have to stop the play because it's going to be a red card. I thought that was what the rule was.
No.
But then the play kept going. So it was like, oh, Quintana is very lucky boy. The referee is not going to give him the second yellow. But then the play continued, develop, and died. And then the referee came back and then gave Quintana the red, which gave the second yellow and then the red card, which was confusing for me, because I thought that if it was going to be a red card offense, you have to start the play. There is no advantage, because the advantage you're going to get is that the man's going out. And I'm sure if you think about it, I guess Halifax would have wanted that attack with Quintana not there than with Quintana still playing, right? So I feel like in a sense it's still a disadvantage for Halifax because they were attacking a back three that shouldn't have been a back three because Quintana
Okay.
shouldn't have been there after that challenge happened. That was what it
All
was
right.
in my mind. So I don't know if you thought something similar or if you just thought you just were like, yeah, that's a second yellow, that's a red card.
Yeah, I mean, I got to plead ignorance because, yeah, what you're saying there, I wasn't 100% sure on. But that does make a lot of sense. So, like, in my head, like, that makes good sense. So, that sounds like what a rule should be, but this is football. We never know. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Ever since
especially,
VAR has come in, I feel like people have understood the rules less and less and less as
yeah,
becoming more and
exactly.
more imposed.
The worst thing possible in football now is watching more than one league because the rules seem to change between each one.
It's 100%
But
true.
yeah, like the desperation for yellow cards from referees for time wasting and kicking the ball away is, for me, like it's just going a little bit over the top. Let's calm down slightly, like because there's plenty of footballs around the pitch. Like if they're going to kick it away a little bit, a ball boy or what, like one of the kids on the side is going to throw a ball back in. So
Yeah.
maybe like let's not worry too much about this issue because
And
it's
and I feel like it also depends on the severity of it. Because if he
yeah,
boots it away into row Z, yeah,
yeah,
that's unsportsmanlike. Give him a yellow. But if he just, he kind of throws it over the top of the guy, that's kind of like tongue in cheek,
yeah.
kind of like,
Yeah, when it's
and
he's got to turn round to pick it up,
yeah,
like
it's
yellow card.
exactly. It's just like
And-
it's just these little things that you do to get under the skin of the opponent, and that's part of
yeah,
the game. It's kind of like the little bit of the dark side of football that
mm,
referees kind of turn a blind eye to because it's why you give a little bit of an extra like nudge when you're tied jostling for the ball, a little elbow
yeah,
here, a little pull there. Like it's the dark arts of football. It's
yeah,
what makes it exciting. It increases the tension, increases the frustration, and that's where we get some really good intense football. But yeah, I agree where it feels like it's a little bit too much. I mean, in terms of
mm,
time wasting, like I like the MLS rule that they're the rules that they're bringing in of like, the player goes down and he needs treatment or he's down for more than a minute, then he can't come back on for a certain amount of time. Or
yeah,
like
yeah, mm,
if you don't come off a substitute after 10 seconds and the player that substituted on has to wait a minute. Like these things are better ways to manage because they're clear
yeah,
and it's easily like employed.
yeah,
But it just feels like collectively the CPL refs this season have been like, okay, we're going to crack down on any and all kinds of time wasting.
yeah,
And it's kind of like, okay, but where's a line? Where's the line? Because there is a line.
yeah. Because we're getting to a point. This year's going to probably have the most cards in the
Yeah,
season.
I mean, I'm pretty sure. Like, I was checking the yellow cards. I think Vancouver FC before this weekend happened, Vancouver FC had the most yellow cards with 30. We're in week what 9?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
That's crazy. And the others weren't that far behind. There were like I think York had like 29 or Halifax at 29 or 28.
Yeah,
So it's just like it's crazy the amount of cautions that are coming out. I don't know why I can't like the Canadian refs are really cracking down,
yeah.
but
Just think of the admin.
yeah, Jesus, the poor admins are pulling all-nighters because of this.
That poor guy in Canada Soccer processing all these fines, getting him
Yeah,
sent.
honestly. But yeah, now looking the red card, a little bit of a confusing one. But then afterwards, Halifax really came into their own, and they had the biggest chance
Mm.
of all, which fell to the man that I think needed the break more
Oh
than
god,
anyone,
yeah. Mm.
is Christian Valesky, because Valesky hasn't been included in the last couple match day squads. No real reason for it. Patrice Geyser's been a little bit cagey.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure, again, Josh Healy has been asking him about it, and Patrice is kind of like not really giving the
Yeah.
most concise of answers. He comes back in, he's on the bench. And I think it was pretty telling that he was on the bench, given that there was no Coimbra because of
Mm.
suspension. Ryan Telfer was also out. So you had no real player that knew how to play number 9, I guess Massimo Ferrin.
Yeah,
But
it's the
between
one, isn't
Ferrin
it?
and the experienced striker that you brought in the offseason,
Mm.
you would think you would go with Valevsky. So that kind
Yeah.
of, for me, it was like, ooh, clearly he doesn't have that much faith in Valesky right now. But then he comes on, he does actually, you know, give a little bit of energy with
Yeah,
also Clement Bahia when he came on. I thought
really
Clement
good
Bahia
again,
was
really good.
really, really good when he came on. Lot of
That
energy.
trade looks really good. Like, it's not really a
Yeah,
trade, is it? But like, it's really, I think,
yeah.
good for both players.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Thomas Geraldo and his unfortunately short stint and
Yeah.
later, but yeah, it seems like it was actually a pretty decent trade all around for everyone
Mm,
involved. Because Bahia was impressive and could have scored right at the end when he like bypassed
mm,
the keeper and tried
yeah.
to score, but Valesky, everything was there for him. The cross came in. I'm pretty sure it took a deflection. It was right on his head. All he had to do was put it into the back of the net, and he hit the crossbar.
Yeah.
And it went out. And it was just like, you know what that reminded me of? It reminded me of last season in the playoff match when Thiago Coimbra hit the
Mm,
crossbar
yeah, yeah.
when Halifax, I think that was against Pacific, right? And they were
Yeah,
down.
yeah. Pacific
Yeah, and
Wild. That's why Dada Luke was suspended for the rest of it.
exactly. And it just felt like it's one of those moments again for Halifax. We're just unlucky when you deserve
Yeah.
better and you have a golden opportunity and you
Mm,
fail to capitalize on it. And again, there couldn't have been a worse player to get it because Valevsky is coming in and he's looking for something to prove himself again
mm,
because he had a lot of pressure on him coming in as the
yeah,
experienced striker to be the one to lead the line and get the goals, and unfortunately was unable to
yeah.
get it. But yeah, Halifax threw everything forward, just missing their shooting boots. And as much as it was a great performance, and you can obviously take these performances and be like, we're getting closer, it's just
Mm,
that little bit extra that you need
yeah.
to actually get the 3 points, and the fact that we're 9 weeks in now and they haven't gotten a win yet,
Mm.
it's like 2023 all over again, except with less draws and more defeats. And
Yeah,
it's almost
sadly
like I wrote
so.
down, how can Halifax buy a win? Is anybody selling one? Because at this point, it feels like
Yeah.
they can't even buy a win right now. So for you, when you look at how well they play, but the fact that they haven't gotten a result, is it just down to bad luck and eventually your luck will change, or is there something else that's maybe causing them to not be able to see through some results?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a football romantic, and like, I want to see like you give Patrice guys all this time because they are coming up against every so much went right last year,
Hmm.
and now he's in the most difficult time possible, and like because things aren't, and he's having to work it out, and it's a big challenge for them. But I believe he can, and they've got good players in this team. But I'm not someone who's investing money into the club, so like, but I think he's in the right place to do that. I know, like, if I try and put my head into the mind of like someone who owns a club and they're trying to do this, the owners and they're looking at what's going on, it's easy for me to say as just a casual fan of the league, that someone who just follows every team, like, well, he just needs a bit of time. This is bad luck. It just looks like bad luck for someone who's owns the club and it's actually costing them money. Maybe they won't see that, but I kind of get the impression that Halifax as a club will see, like, you like the owners. I get the impression they're looking at going, yeah, this is bad luck. Like, we've
Yeah.
got the right person to turn this around, and I think he's in the. I mean, we said it before. I think he's in a good place to be given that opportunity, hopefully, to turn it around. But it's just going to be. It's just one of those things where you just like at some point this luck's going to change, but it could be a while. Like just fate's going to make it really hard for him.
Yeah, because you look at the match, you look at like the actual stats. Like I
Mm,
said, 26 shots, only 6 of them on target, but they had an XG of 1.93. They should have
yeah,
had not just one goal, but basically 2 goals,
yeah,
and they couldn't get one over. And a lot of players had really good performances. I was really impressed with like Aiden Daniels. I
yeah.
thought he was pretty integral to the way that they were attacking and putting on pressure and helping to press from the front. Jeremy Gagnon Laparé,
Mm.
he's had kind of like a so-so start to his
Yeah, it's
career back
been.
at Halifax, but I think this is one of his more trademark performances in the midfield as sort of that engine of
Mhm.
that connector. Riley Ferrazzo, I don't know if you saw, when
Yeah,
I talked about him last, like in the episode by myself, but like this new role of him into
definitely
midfield,
enjoying it.
he looks really good in it. I didn't know. maybe Afshin Gopi was onto something when he put a full back into midfield when he did Kane and Chung, because
Mhm.
Ferrazzo is now in midfield, and we'll talk about York and Juan Cordova
Ah, yeah.
in midfield as well. Maybe it's becoming a trend, one that's working, because he had a really, really good performance in this new role, and like mentioned by Ian, like a couple of these players that
Mm,
started or came off the bench that looked really good and really added to the energy and the dynamism of the team to try to press forward and attack. Like the performances are there, it just they
yeah.
can't
Just
get it over the line.
suffering the same as Pacific when they get into the final third, but Pacific has just had that stronger defense, and
Mm.
like Ottawa an exception, but look at Pacific now, and I mean Sean Melvin and Emil Gazdov, like those players can interchange, and they're still like putting in quality performances. Like Pacific have done really well defensively to get themselves organised and the way they're set up, and it just
Mm.
made it too difficult for Halifax on this outing, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it is. I'm also a little bit of a romantic, so I'm also gonna go with that. It'll come. They'll come
Yeah,
good eventually.
yeah,
Like, so it's sort of like karma. There is an evening out. Things will even out. Like the soccer gods even things out. You can even in added time. We had 10 minutes of added time
yeah,
in this one, similar to last week, but this time instead of last week when there was Halifax down a man and
yeah.
being under the cosh, this time they gave him 10 minutes to try to 10 more minutes to try to find a goal, but they still couldn't manage it. So don't know how much more the ref could have done for
No,
Halifax in that one.
yeah.
Literally was like, I gave you an extra man, I gave you 10 minutes, you can't score. But yeah, so we'll see what happens with Halifax, whether they can buy a win. But yeah, Pacific, really impressive just to end off there with them. I think for me, the biggest thing is now that they're having more injuries and suspensions and stuff
Yeah.
piling up. They need to find plan Bs and plan Cs for
Mm,
the upcoming matches. Now that there are going to be some players out with international competitions, these suspensions and further injuries, I want
yeah.
to see how Merriman adapts, sort of like
Mm,
how he did in this match
yeah.
with the three at the back. How he adapts in the following weeks to see, if they can continue to be this good defensively, and then next week when hopefully Rian Moore is back. I don't know how long he's out with Trinidad, but hopefully he's
No,
back.
yeah. Yeah.
We'll get to see hopefully a little bit more of an attacking emphasis
Mm,
from Pacific in the weeks to come. But that is it for that match. Let's move on now to the second match of the weekend, which was Cavalry FC against Forge FC, a big one
mm.
between the two arch rivals. Like as expected with this one's a true chess match. Only one goal in it. Tobias Warchowski got it in the 59th minute. And we also saw another red card, this time a straight red card right at
Yeah.
the end. 89th minute to Kadeem Kane, who literally just came on, I think, a few minutes beforehand.
Yeah, they took off all the old boys, brought in the young ones, and
And the young ones got up to no good.
yeah.
They got up to trouble. But let's start with the beginning of the match, because I was surprised, I guess a little bit, that we're knowing the way that Forge are. I
Mm,
thought that Forge would try to come in and try to early on set a tempo, take control of the ball, because they know how good Cavalry can be, especially at home, and try to really destabilize them. But instead, it was
mm.
Cavalry doing that.
Yeah.
Cavalry were really, really dominant in that first half,
Super
and pretty
aggressive.
much
Yeah.
overall super aggressive in their pressing, really trying to make it super difficult for Forge to have any amount of possession and control. It was really well organized too. It wasn't just
Mm,
players pressing for the sake of pressing. It was very well structured, and on the ball as well. They really put pressure on Forge as well, trying to get onto goal.
mm,
And I was expecting Forge to have a little bit more of a fight back, but I felt like Forge the last few weeks, they haven't really started games all that well.
mm.
It's taking them some time to kind of get into their rhythms. And in this match, probably one of the few teams, you could say them and Ottawa are one of the few teams that if Forge don't start well against, they will actually like suffer and they won't be able to really grow back into the game. For me, it felt like there was a small period in the first half where they kind of had a little bit more possession, and then right at the end, they had a good spell. But beyond that, I don't know about you, but did you really see Forge really in this match
No,
at all?
no. I mean, Paddy Vanger after that yellow card disappeared for
Hmm.
most of the match. Carl Becker had possibly the worst game I've ever seen him play. Like, it just looked like a man that was just exhausted of carrying a team for a year last year, like
He was a
leading us to
ghost
the
of
playoffs.
himself.
Yeah, it just
And
so
and
many.
Borges as well. Borges
Yeah,
looked like it was like that was the young, inexperienced Borges that lost the ball and made bad
mm,
decisions. Like it was just very odd from the likes of them.
yeah. They were just. I mean, Owolabi Belewu was my player of the week because like he rescued this team over and
Hmm.
over again in that first half, especially because yeah, the rest just weren't there. I mean, Malcolm Duncan had a decent game at times. He put in a decent enough performance, but the rest of the team were overrun. They just hadn't like in no areas of the pitch were they competing. Like the cavalry players were always on top. Um, they just came out as the stronger team, and like Wachewski's been a really great signing. Really great signing. I remember when we were thinking about this at the beginning of the year, thinking like, we'll see how he gets on. Like he's probably going to have to work his way in if he's not been playing like top flight football for a while. And but he's just stepped in perfectly. And I was really impressed with Leighton Brooks again. I thought he showed flashes where he could become like really useful to this team. And defensively, they were strong. Like when they needed to be, they made it really difficult. And it was just an all-round really good performance on Cavalry, and I think I'm really worried we're getting to the point where Cavalry are good in the regular season and Forge will get the number in the playoffs, but we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it was from Calvary's point of view. I know there's somebody that commented on something that I said that I was like, Cavalry are mentality monsters, this guy was sort of like, well, it doesn't really feel that way because you look at the results and they haven't been playing well, and it's very true. They haven't been playing
Yeah.
well in the first 8 games. That's why they keep drawing and not winning. But for me, just seeing what they did last year, and I can still see the kind of the that still remnants of that in the performance this year is that they never kind of say like they never are satisfied. They never say die kind of things. Like
Yeah.
they come back from games or even when they've fallen asleep and they've allowed teams to punish them, like I can think of the York game a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
where they were losing 2-1 because they fell asleep and they allowed York to get it, but then they came back and made it 2-2. It's like they never really allow themselves, they never like concede defeat. You kind of have to force them to it.
Yeah.
And even though they haven't been playing really well, you can still see that in the way that they're playing. And in this match specifically, I think I felt a little vindicated because that kind of shone through in that they did not allow Forge a moment really
No.
up until maybe the very end, and even then, they didn't allow Forge a moment to breathe, a moment to really settle into the game and to dominate. And if you had said if it wasn't for Malik Oluwabi Belewu, and if it wasn't for Chris Kalongo
Yeah.
making a couple of
Yeah.
big saves, it
Yeah.
could have been 2 or 3, maybe even 4-0
Mm.
for Cavalry. And they were outshot. Forge was outshot 17-7. Forge
Yeah.
only managed 8 touches in the box and only 2 shots on target. That's
Even it,
so unlike Forge.
yeah, even in that, were you a little bit worried when it went into halftime at 0-0? It's like, oh god, Cavalry, you had to take one of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit, just because I almost felt like I have this saying where it's like I see things happen and then that I've seen before, and so I'm like, I've seen this movie before. I've seen this movie before, and it felt like I was seeing the movie again. But
Yeah.
thankfully, it was not that case. Or I guess in the sense of if you're a Cavalry fan,
Yeah.
because Cavalry pushed on even more in the second half. And I think the substitutes were really big for them in terms of, bringing in a little bit more stability. I think Diaz was the biggest one, obviously, in the goal, that pass that he did out to Fraser Aird,
Yeah,
very, very slick, very clever
really good
pass.
goal.
Love that from him. Fraser Aird, who, I mean, he's one of the most underrated players, and I love Fraser Aird because of the service that he brings.
Yeah.
Again, another great cross into the box, this
Mm.
time driven. A little bit lucky on the deflection on the way, but Tobias Wachowski there at the back post
Mm.
managed to tuck it in for the goal. And that's, for me, that's textbook Cavalry. It is making quick transition from one side to the other after you catch the opposition out. You go out to the wings, you have good service from the wings into the box, and
Yeah.
then you have your big striker there to finish chances. That's the way that Cavalry love to
Yeah.
score. That's their like main way of attacking, and that's exactly what succeeded. And I was really, really happy that we saw Tobias Wachowski up top.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've been saying it for a while. I am not the biggest fan of him being played in a wing position. I like him up top. And the fact that it was him, and I think it was Camargo in sort of a two-ish at times.
It's like
Camargo
a
was
four.
really,
Yeah, it was. They were copying Vancouver a bit, weren't they? With
yeah,
this
it was
like
like a
4-2-2
4-2-2
too.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. I don't know if Tommy Wilden Jr. was trying to emulate Jesse Marsh with the Canadian men's national team in the 4-2-2 there. But yeah, Camargo was basically like another striker. But at
Mm.
least for Tobias, he still like hung around wide and stuff like that, but he was still
Yeah.
like the focal point, which I was really happy because I feel like that's where he plays the best.
Mm.
And he got that goal, and he could have scored other ones too. He had the bicycle kick that was denied
Yeah.
because again, Kalongo and Malik Belawu came in for rescue, and he had a free kick from like 28 yards that he just thundered against the post. Chris
Oh,
Kalongo, I think,
both
had
of them,
no chance.
yeah.
That had so much venom in it. That shot was
Yeah.
crazy. Would have loved for that to have gone in just for the sake of the goal, of how wonderful the goal would have been.
Mm.
But yeah, I was really happy with Rachowski, and Camargo, I think, did really well in that position as well. Could have had a goal when Kalongo made the mistake, basically giving right to him and
Yeah.
tried to chip him,
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
didn't put enough. He didn't put
No, yeah,
enough
not
power
quick enough.
behind it.
Him and Trafford, like they literally just put their bodies on the line. Like Marco was getting carried off Trafford as well. Just the two of them were like the symbols of what like the leaders of Cavalry in that game. Like it got everyone going, and then like Shamit Shom, I thought had a fantastic game because you see
Yes.
these other players doing everything, and Shom was getting played in the sort of more attacking side. Then when the changes happened, when Trafford went off, he went more defensive when Lucas Diaz came on, and like Camargo and Trafford and like Dan Klump going everywhere. Like this spine, like of leaders in this team, just isn't like they just look like they inspire everyone on this pitch and get them like. Shamit Shom's a good player, but he's playing like a quality player all the time because you've got all these other players who are just putting in everything for their team, and like that's like Tommy Wilden Jr. must be just like licking his lips watching these players like competing like that.
No, especially because I feel like Shamit Shom and Fraser Aird were sort of competing for game time on at that sort of right back role. And I like Fraser Aird a lot, and I feel like he
Yeah,
should be in that position. But I also really like Shom as well, so I'm really
yeah,
glad that he found a way to include them both. And I
yeah,
think their
definitely.
combination was huge in that
Mm,
game until you mentioned like when Lucas Diaz came on and everything. But in the first half, their combination together was
mm,
superb, and he kind of got the best of both worlds. Shamit Shom, he's great technically, so when he's in those half spaces, he can create space, and then Fraser
mm,
Aird or Camargo or even Tobias Wachowski can take advantage of those spaces that
yeah,
he creates, and it just causes more chaos
yeah,
for the defense, and that's exactly what you want from your
yeah,
attack, to create as much chaos and destabilize and pull, defenders out and stuff like that. So I really liked
yeah,
the way that Tommy Golden Jr. did. I think that in this particular match, he kind of outcoached Bobby Smirniotis.
yeah, definitely.
I also think, I think for Forge, it was just a bad day at the office in general.
Mm.
Like a lot of players are not playing all that well. Like we mentioned, like Borges, Choinière, Baribanga, they didn't have that usual
One in the game.
connection.
That's all.
Parra, who has been so integral,
Yeah,
barely saw him really bomb up
I don't remember.
and
Yeah, they like you could barely remember him going over the
Yeah,
halfway
I think
line.
he had like a free kick at shot, which was
Yeah,
like the biggest thing that reminded me he was on the pitch.
yeah,
And Poku was on the graveyard shift because no one was creating the space for him. So where was
yeah,
he gonna go? He's kind of like that in behind striker, and there was no
yeah,
space in behind. So it was, yeah, just a very bad day at the office in terms of the attack and the
mm,
midfield, but really, really good day at the office for the defense, specifically with, Malik Oluwabi-Bellew. What a
yeah,
player he's been for
yeah,
Forge
fantastic.
this season, and he's still, I think, up there for me as one of the defenders of the season so far, just in terms of what he's been able to bring at such a young age
Yeah,
to Forge. And had it not been for him and a couple heroics from Colongo as well, these young boys,
yeah,
it would have been probably a lot worse
hmm
for Forge. So, I mean, there's still silver linings. There's still good things that Forge can take away from this whole
yeah,
tournament. But I want to talk to you about the red card before we move on, because I've always said the worst players you can do something towards are Latinos, because we
you're
love
allowed
to
to
make a
say
meal out of it.
that.
I'm a Latino. I'm allowed to say that. We love to make the meal out of
Yeah,
things, and it very much felt like, you know, Kane shouldn't. You should never put your elbow and try to push somebody in that way. But he like nudged him with it. He kind of was just
yeah.
like, get off me. What Diego Gutierrez looked like? He got like an elbow from the top rope, and this was WWE. He sold that elbow like an Oscar winner. It was
Yeah.
incredible.
God, thank
Um,
God he's okay.
yeah, thank God. Like I thought, think of his family.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, what were your opinions on the red card? Because I thought it is a red card by the letter of the law,
Yeah.
and you're always asking for a red card. But I thought that Gutierrez
Yeah.
made
I
a
think
3-course meal out of that.
I think Gutierrez deserves the yellow for it as well.
Yeah,
Just out of embarrassment. But I mean, you talk to Rion Moore. Rion Moore be like, he's got to be off.
true.
And it's going like it's another one of these. Like it's a red card. Like yeah, it's been a silly boy, but it's nothing more than that. But yeah, you're gonna get the red when you do that, aren't you?
Yeah, no, it's what do you expect? So, I mean, not the biggest of losses for Forge, really. I mean, Kadeem came as a good little option off the bench, but it
Yeah,
would have been very different if that was like a Borges or a
yeah,
Becker or
exactly.
something like that. They have other options, so it's not gonna be the biggest loss, but just
Yeah,
a little bit more salt in the wounds, I think,
yeah, it's
for
gonna be more worse for
Forge.
him trying to compete for minutes, like
Yeah,
get
exactly.
himself
And
back.
this would have been a great opportunity because it was such a bad day at the office for a lot of players to kind of
Yeah,
show why maybe you deserve to be in the lineup for next
yeah,
match. But unfortunately for him, emotions got the better of him, and
yeah,
he went up against one of the worst players that he could for stuff like that. So very unlucky for him. But yeah, Cavalry with the 1-0 win. Now they're on track to match their record from last season,
mm,
where last episode I mentioned that they went 1-6-1 last season as well. But
yeah.
then the next 8 matches they went 7 wins and only 1 loss. Well, this is the
So
first
yeah, here
of
we
maybe
go.
7 if they're going to repeat.
Yeah,
If
strap in,
things are
Cavalry fans.
exactly, you might be in a really good period here if history is to repeat itself. So we'll see. Keep an eye on that as the weeks go on. But yeah, I think that now let's move on to the third match, which
Yeah,
was between Valour FC and Atletico Ottawa. Don't think you can complain too much
no,
about this loss, especially considering that Ottawa now, thanks to this win, are undefeated in 9. They are well clear at the top of the table thanks to this result and all the results that they've been able to build. And it was an impressive victory, I think,
yeah,
because even though it wasn't that high scoring and the second one came in basically at the last minute and it was a
mm,
1-0 game for most of the time that there was a goal, it
yeah,
was still a dominant professional result
mm,
from Ottawa, and since it is Valour, I'll let you start with
I'm going
what
to
you
take the
thought.
Valour side,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll let's start with Valour before we get on, because I feel like we're gonna hamper on about Ottawa for a little while. So let's start with Valour, because I thought that they actually started the game off pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of it was on Ottawa taking a little time to heat up, and how much of
Mm.
it was Valour. But to be fair, I think it took until like half an hour until Ottawa had their first real chance. So pretty decent start
Yeah.
from Valour.
Like defensively, like I don't think you can fault Valour, because Ottawa are just they're just a different animal at the moment in this league.
Mm-mm.
And to keep this game at 1-0, and then obviously Valour didn't have much of an attacking threat. Like there's not pretend that they did. Like Swibble was on his own. Like, and they were talking about this on One Soccer. Like he's on an island on his own, just running after the ball and getting nothing. And like Phil Santos tried to make a little bit of a change. You're losing 1-0. What does it matter if you lose 2-0? Like let's try it. Let's try and do something. He's tried to do something, and that's when Ottawa have gone and got their second. So I think, like, from a Valour point of view, if Phil Santos went to throw that ball down when Valour scored, and you could see his mind just going, yeah, actually, they're just really good. And they just,
Yeah.
it goes from a really angry throw to, I'm just going to drop it. Like, what am I going to do against this? And but that's what Ottawa are at the moment. And I think that's credit to Valour, like, because they are way above Halifax at the moment. They're not far off the teams above them. And after such a poor start, like defensively, they've started to improve. And you go against another team in this league currently on the form that Ottawa are playing in, and you could probably probably start building some attacks. But I mean, you've got to take the positives out of it. I think from a Valour point of view, that they did keep them to 1-0 for the majority of the game.
Yeah, no, and I think, there's still some positives that you can take from it if you're a Valor fan. The start that you had, I mean, Raphael Owen was probably the best player on the pitch for them, and that was making his
Yeah,
first start in, I think,
that
over a
first,
year.
yeah,
I
first
think it was
half, but the
last
second half,
April.
yeah, it's been a long
You
time. But
could
you could
tell that it was in the
see
second
that
half.
second half, it was like, get him off because he's going to get hurt or he's going to get a red card, because
Yeah.
he just needs those minutes to build up some, like, just get a run going.
Yeah, but in the first half he was really good,
Brilliant.
defensively solid. He
Mm,
was, getting into. He was really like stuck in with his
yeah,
tackles, and like defensively, I was impressed. And it's like, this is what Valor I've been missing a little bit of, that kind
yeah,
of midfield general. And so it's great to see him back, and
yeah,
the fact that he came off and Valor looked worse without him
yeah.
shows
Hmm.
that, because you saw Valor kind of sit back another 10 feet after he left, because he wasn't
Mm.
there to kind of like get stuck
No,
in
yeah,
before
but you just
Ottawa.
can't do it at the moment. Like, it's going
Yeah.
to take a while. Don't know how long it will take for him to really build up full, like, match fitness, and hopefully he can. Like, the poor guy's had so much injury issues. Like, yeah, it'd be great if he can get up to being able to play 90 minutes. Like, we're watching that first half. Like, if he could do that for 90 minutes, that'd be fantastic for the club.
Yeah, no, definitely it'll be a
Mm.
huge boost for Fernando Santos. But yeah, I think losing him when he came off, and also I felt like in the second half, especially, but also a little bit in the first half towards the end, Valor just like it started to get sloppy in possession, a lot of
Mm.
silly turnovers, a lot of silly
Yeah,
passes that you give if you give Ottawa the opportunity to attack
yeah,
30-40 yards away from your goal instead of from their goal, like, they're going to punish you, because they are a very, very
mm,
good transitional attacking team. So
yeah,
you don't want to invite that pressure on. You don't want to give them the opportunity. But it felt like Valor were just struggling. There was a couple of moments of indecisiveness, and that's where Ottawa were able to pounce. And the amount of times that I saw Valor lose the ball
mm.
in the midfield, halfway between the halfway line and their box, is like, that's the worst place you could lose
Yeah.
the
But they're
ball
still that
against
team.
Ottawa.
They're still that
Yeah,
team at the moment. They're still, like, they're a bunch of misfits put together almost, and
yeah,
sent on the road for 8 weeks. They're still not a proper team. Like, they're still gelling. They're still improving, and they're still probably trying to work out who's the right player for what position as well at times. So they're going to give away chances. But that's again why it's still like good on the defense, because we know we're going to give, when you watch Valour, they're going to give up chances, and when you watch Ottawa, they're going to earn chances. So it's going to be a busy day for the defense.
It was indeed, and it was indeed, because moving now, I guess we'll go to Ottawa, since this was pretty much mostly Ottawa.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, it took a little while for them to get going, but they really came alive like around 30 minutes. And I think that's when Del Campo had that really big chance that was crossed to him, and he tried to side foot it into the back of the net, but it just like got the wrong side of the post. I think that was when they started to really start to kick in into gear. You saw them starting to take advantage of Valour's mistakes and really put the pressure on in the midfield and win the ball back up high, and just really take advantage of the space in behind. I think that left side specifically for Ottawa was one of the most dangerous, with Matteo De Brienne, who was my player of the week, because I thought offensively he was always there. He was always marauding that space. He was always trying to get past his man, cut inside, try to get the cross in, try to get that ball in, trying to overload the wide areas. And it just felt like Valour couldn't deal with it. They started to get picked apart by Ottawa, and the way that they were passing, and the way that they were taking advantage of those mistakes. And you started to see, like, it just felt like the defense started to get more panicked. And then the first goal came about from a penalty. I wanted to ask, because I thought it was a little bit of a soft penalty on Del Campo. I don't know if you thought the same.
Yeah, it was. It's one of those ones, like, we've got the benefit of the replay. The ref doesn't. Yeah, it's like, it seems a cop out to keep going to that, but I did think it was a bit harsh. Like, yeah, I mean, I think it was right as a penalty, but I guess I've got my Valour bias. I was like, how do you see that? How are you sure?
Fair. But yeah, it felt like, whether it was penalty or not, the referee can really do much else. And so he pointed to the spot, and Ollie Bassett stepped up. And it's been a little while since we've seen Ollie Bassett sort of on the score sheet. And so, with how prolific he was last season, so it was pretty nice to see, him kind of get back onto the score sheet. Very well taken penalty. And at that point, for you, when you saw Ottawa take the lead, where you're like, okay, that's it, that's over.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back into your head, the 7-0, quite quickly.
Yeah.
Especially the way they just, Ottawa looked so comfortable, but the pace they've got and the lack of pace Valour have at defense, you just thought they would then just go and capitalize on it. But like, credit to Valour that they kept them back. I mean, I don't know. Ottawa did play really well and should have had more. Like, they should have continued to score. Like, they should have put the game to bed a little quicker. But I think Sam Salter would be delighted they didn't, so that his goal is a little bit more emphatic on the result, and with his fight to try and get back from Del Campo, who couldn't score past the mighty Valour to continue.
No, it's true. And then now it's 2 games, I think, that Del Campo hasn't scored. And I think in both of those games he hasn't scored, Sam Salter has. So maybe the tide is turning in the striker role for Ottawa. I mean, that's always great for a team, anyways, to have strikers pushing each other, and like, if one striker starts to falter, if the other one starts to pick up, then there's that added pressure of like, listen, you were scoring before, but I'm scoring now, so move over, right? So we'll see what happens for them. But yeah, no, you're right in that, like, they probably should have put it away earlier. I was looking at the stats, and they had an XG of 2.36 in that match, Atletico Ottawa. And like, before that goal, I'm pretty sure they had like an XG of like 2.1 or something like that, or like
Yeah.
2 or like 2 exactly, or something like that, because it wasn't like a very easy finish necessarily from that angle,
No,
especially with all
really
the
well
flying
taken.
bodies. Yeah. So should have put it away, but the fact that they didn't even have to, it felt like honestly the last 20 minutes felt sort of everyone was resigned to the result.
Yeah.
Valour couldn't really do much, and so Ottawa were just managing the game. They were managing the minutes, the
Mm.
effort,
Yeah.
passing it around, trying to break the team down. It wasn't like they were just having possession for possession's sake, trying to do something with it. But it was like, if it's not there, let's not push it. Let's go back. Let's recycle. Let's focus.
Yeah.
It felt like a very, very professional game from Ottawa to see it out, and then it was like, oh, we got the second, awesome. Now we have 2 goals
Mm.
instead of 1. But it was almost like for them, it was like, let's just see out the results. Let's just make sure that we continue this undefeated streak and
Yeah.
not give a sliver for Valour to come back. And to be fair, that's exactly what happened, because I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that they had like Valour had like an XG of like 0.07 or something like that in
Okay.
the second half. So
That sounds
something.
like
Yeah, better than
better.
0, I guess. So, but
I
yeah,
felt
no,
so. I mean, Johnny Swivel's done a lot of sprinting for
yeah,
very little touches of the ball. I mean, he's got his cardio in for the game for the day, but he really didn't get much football in. Like they tried to make those changes to try and be a little bit more attacking. It's still 1-0. Okay, let's make a few little changes and try to be more attacking. And it made no difference because Ottawa were playing so well and so comfortably, and they managed the game so well. They saw the changes that were being made, dealt with it like immediately, and it's like that. This is the team you're playing against now, and you can only give them credit for how good they are as a team.
yeah. Especially when you look at the fact that the goals are now coming from different players than the
It's
players that
everywhere,
were
isn't
coming in before. And it brings me to this big question, because I said it last week, and now it's even more. It's like, who can actually stop
it?
Ottawa right now? Because you look at how they have going for them. They have star players,
Mm,
overwhelmingly good attacks. They know how to break teams down. They know how to get the best out of some of their players and really attack with aggression, with intensity, and clearly with a lot of success. Hence why they've scored a lot of goals and
mm.
won a lot of games. This game again showed me they have really good game management. Something that was a huge issue last season was your
Yeah.
game management, and it threatened to be that a little bit in that one game. I think it was second week. I forget who it was against, with Ottawa, where they tried to go super defensively and they conceded a
Mm.
goal for it, and they drew
Well, that's
instead of
fine.
won. I
Yeah.
forget who that was against, but again, really good game management now. They have a super
Oh,
strong
Cavalry.
bench.
Sorry.
It was Cavalry.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was
No,
Cavalry.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Really strong bench, really good depth with the
Yeah.
players that they have. Like, we have barely seen, the likes of Tissot. We've barely seen the likes of Kevin Dos Santos. We've seen the likes of a lot of other players on their
Mm.
bench that, you know, would probably be more featured in other teams.
Mm.
And to put a cherry on top, their defense is so good too. Like, it's not even
Yeah.
just they have a really good attack; they have such a good defense as well. They have Amir Didic, for goodness sake. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And they're rotating their keepers, and it feels like every time they rotate their keepers, the keepers give a reason as to why they should start over the other
Yeah,
keeper.
exactly. Yeah.
And it's just like they have so much going for them. They're kind of like, I don't know if you had this. I don't know how long ago it was for you, but I don't know if you had this for when like you were in high school. But there was always that
Oh,
like
I think.
a very slight one. But I don't know if you had this where there's like that popular kid and you want to hate him because he's
Yeah.
popular, but he's like genuinely a nice person too.
Yeah.
And he's popular, he's genuinely a nice person, he does a lot of good things, and it's
Yeah.
like, there has to be something wrong with you. I have to have a reason to hate you beyond
Yeah,
just pure
exactly.
jealousy. That feels like Ottawa right now, where there's nothing bad about them, and
No.
there has to be something bad. There has to be something
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
obviously there's small things you could criticize, sure, if you want to be nitpicky, but overall it's like they're unstoppable.
Yeah.
How do you stop them?
Yeah.
So I don't know. For you, what do you think? What is there a
Yeah,
way
no,
to stop Ottawa right now?
that's the issue because we spent last season all like gushing over Debrienne's like emergence,
Hmm.
Aparicio, like everyone they brought in, the players that we've been like these guys are great. So then when they all put them together, you can't hate them for being like,
Yeah.
oh, bloody super team, like you just bought this. Like no, these are all the players I really like watching.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I wonder if Ottawa's scouting team used our podcast to be like to be
Oh
like,
yeah,
who do they
yeah,
really like?
maybe,
Let's
maybe.
get all of them.
Yeah, yeah. We're free. We've got some free time, guys. So.
Yeah, honestly. Um, but yeah, no, you're right. It's hard to hate on Ottawa, and obviously they have amazing fans too. I love seeing like Capital
Mm,
City supporters group,
yeah.
all the memes that they have, and the content that they put out, and they're just really nice guys, and it's just
Mm.
their their team is doing so well, and it's kind of like it's so hard to hate on you guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, genuinely though, is there something that can stop Ottawa right now in the league? Is there a team? Is there a scenario, a situation that you see that can stop Ottawa? Because barring a massive injury, like barring like an illness taking a hold of
Mm.
half of the Ottawa squad and keeping them out of the game of the match squad for like God forbid
Yeah.
a month or two. I don't see how this side can be stopped right now.
No. And like not wanting to just completely echo what they were saying on One Soccer watching the game, like the Pacific match where Pacific in the Canadian Championship where they got the better, like that's at the moment, that's the only way you can see it. You've got to be absolutely flawless in defense, and when you get your chances, you've got to take them. Like
Hmm.
that is it. Like you've you've got like there's very few teams on form at the moment who can defensively deal with Ottawa's attack and the way they go at teams. And when you get in those, when you do get your chances, you've got to outscore them. And I mean, it sounds really simple to say, but to do it is incredibly difficult. And I think we're not going to see it very often this season, unless something all of a sudden, I don't know, if they end up having an argument, old Chelsea style with when John Terry and Wayne Bridges.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean,
This whole
otherwise,
back
like,
room kind of
it's
like
going,
locker room blow up. Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna take a soap opera to take this team down. I
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I mean, if you're an Ottawa fan or if you enjoy the way Ottawa are playing
think.
right now, looks like the good times are gonna keep on rolling for you
Yeah.
because I don't know how this team can be stopped. We'll see. We'll see what happens as the season goes on. But let's now move on to our fourth and final match, which was between York United and Vancouver FC. The most goals scored out of any game was in this one, and probably the best goals were scored in this one because there's some
Yeah.
really, really
Nice
good
one.
goals scored in this match against York and for Vancouver FC. And it was interesting because I'm pretty sure in most of history between these two sides, which isn't much, pretty sure York has not lost a match, or maybe they lost one
Oh, is that
match.
right? I didn't check back
But
actually.
pretty sure York United are like close to 100%. I don't think they've even drawn a game. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure it's been like York winning almost every game. And I think the only time that the Vancouver FC won was their first ever win. That's what it was. Their first
yeah.
ever win the second week of the CPL when they faced York. They beat York, but since
Yeah,
then they haven't beat York United
the
at all.
Babuli at the experiment.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't beat York United at all, and so this one going into it, it felt like Vancouver C were going to have more motivation to kind of, to break the duck because it feels like
Mhm.
York United is sort of like their bogey team. Um, but it was another really good game where Vancouver C were unable to beat York United.
Yeah,
A lot of like we mentioned, high quality goals, especially from the likes of like Juan Cordova and Güero Diaz, who scored some pretty nice goals. Um, but the big news going into this match was obviously that York United have a new gaffer
Yeah.
in Benjamin Mora.
He didn't
Mentioned it a
waste
little
time
bit.
switching it up as well, did he?
No, he did not. Mentioned it a little bit last week before it was confirmed that he was probably looking like the new coach, and I mentioned that the new coach is gonna have to really, put an identity, put a
Yeah.
game plan, really put the players into buying into his philosophy, having real structure because a team like this needs it, or else they're gonna get unruly.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, he did not
Bang.
mince words, did
Yeah.
not waste time and starting a 3-5-2/3-5-1-1 formation, three at the back, with
Yeah.
Oswaldo Leon making his first start of the season as
Mm.
captain. No bigger statement in terms of
Yeah.
choosing a lineup than that. I'm sure everyone was floored. They were like, "Where did the 4-2-3-1 go?"
Yeah, exactly.
And you had Wojciechowski as the striker. You
Yeah.
had Juan Cordova in midfield. You had a squad that admittedly was also suffering from a lot of absences. There
Mm.
was no Babuli or there was no Brian Wright because of injuries.
Yeah.
Salanovic was on international duty. And Austin Ritchie, I found out, was at a family wedding in Italy. So he was unable to.
Okay.
He was eating some good pasta. So I can't be
Yeah.
mad at him for not showing up to the game.
Carb
Um,
loading for the next one.
exactly. Generally card loading. But even still, like, these are his absences. He was not afraid to be like, all right, let's just go and just
Mm.
put out a 3-5-2 formation. And as the match began, it looked actually quite good.
Mm.
They were really, starting to. They started on the front foot and they got a handle to the game in the opening stages, put Vancouver under some good early pressure in the opening, like 15-20 minutes. And that's why they got rewarded with the early goal of Wojciechowski in the 18th minute. Really clever ball in and a really, really nice finish,
Nice
kind
little
of just,
stab with the outside the boot,
yeah, a
wasn't
little
it? Yeah.
stab with the, like, I can't even call
Mm.
it a trivela because you got to do a little bit more. It just literally
Yeah.
it was almost like the outside of his foot was a golf club and
Yeah.
like a wedge, and he just kind of like wedged it
Yeah.
into the top and into the roof of the net. A really good goal and
Yeah.
from Wojciechowski. Really good for him. Obviously, last season missed most of the season because of a
Yes.
long-term injury. So
Yeah.
and he's such a young player as well. So
And he
good for
really
him to
looked,
be.
I mean, we've already mentioned how long ago high school was for me, but it looks like he's still in high school. Like, he looks
When
so
he
young.
scored that goal and the camera zoomed in on him, I was like, who let the high schooler play? Is this the exceptionally young talent player that they
Yeah,
just signed?
exactly.
Because that's what it looks like to me. No, but
The
yeah,
new
Wojciechowski.
baby-faced assassin.
Yeah, genuinely the new babyface assassin. He's not Norwegian; he's Ukrainian now. But really good goal, and it felt
Mm.
like the new experiment started to work. What did you make of York United's start to the game?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I liked how they just, yeah, not happy, not afraid to shake it up, not give, like, given Halifax a bit of a bashing for playing the three at the back, but I thought this looked like, yeah, you can't drop a Batney or Stirring, and like they played well. You put Leon with them, and you're giving these other players a chance to go. And the Juan Cordova experiment in the center of the field was really interesting because I he comes across as a player who's got a lot of quality, but Max Ferrari's got the athleticism
Hmm.
that you want as a wing back. So you don't want to lose that athleticism because Cordova wants the ball and he wants to do other things. He's not like you're losing something from him if you're going to ask him to bomb up and down. Whereas Max Ferrari can do that all game and he can be really effective. The chucking in the middle was really interesting, and yeah, we're keen to see if that continues once these sort of players come back into the team that we're missing. Could be quite useful. He's a technically very good player. So
Hmm. And that's the thing. That's what a lot of people were sort of expecting with him coming in is that he's a high caliber player, technically and physically as well.
mm,
But we've only really seen him on the wings. And so it was really interesting to be like it was surprising, but then thinking about it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. He's
mm,
technically one of the best players on the ball.
yeah,
Why not put him into midfield where he
yeah,
can be on the ball more? And so it was like, oh, okay, this actually does make sense, and it worked really well. I think
Yeah.
him pairing alongside like Elijah Adekugbe, who I thought had a really good game as well,
Yeah.
and that midfield three just allowed him to play to his strengths.
Yeah. I wouldn't trust
And
him in a two. Like, I think because
no,
there was a three, it gives him the chance. Well, okay, if he's out of position, if he's making mistakes because he's not played in centre mid, Adekugbe and Martinez are they're covering. Like they look like they were prepared for that. So that worked out quite well.
yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, don't think he's a player that you put in a double pivot. I think you put
Yeah.
him in kind of like a three, because if there's somebody behind him, like you mentioned, yeah, if he has any
Mm.
mistakes, or even though he's a good defender, you want him to be more
Yeah.
as a
He's a
player
good
in
defender as a
possession.
fullback, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. As much as a fullback can be.
Yeah.
So it was, but it was, yeah, really good performance from Cordova, and I really enjoyed the way that the dynamic was for
Mm.
York. And then in the second half, I mean, or like at the end of the first half, rather, Cordova with what a stunner of a goal,
Mm.
just
Did you
thumped
like?
it.
Is it just me, or did he sold the keeper with his eyes from like 35 yards? How'd you do that? Like, because he was just expecting the cross, and then just
Yeah,
bang. Like, so he's like, so like Cavalry's having to scamper across because he's just expecting a cross into the back post.
yeah. I feel bad because a lot of people were bashing on Irving for that one, but like I want to give him a bit of benefit of the doubt because everyone and their mothers thought that was a cross coming in.
Exactly.
It looked
Yeah,
like
he
a set
sold
piece
everyone.
routine where you just bring it to the man there from a more central position and cross it probably to the
Mm.
back post with like a curled whipped cross.
Yeah.
And also, if you look back, the ball barely moves. It was a knuckleball shot. It
Yeah.
like it barely spins. It did move,
Yeah.
but it was very much a knuckleball shot, and that's like the worst enemy of any keeper. It
Yeah.
could look routine, but as a keeper, you have a split second to react. And if the
Yeah.
ball's moving in whichever way it wants to, then you kind of have
Yeah.
to gamble. And
It's a good
unfortunately
hit.
for Callum Irving, he couldn't do much about it. So it looked worse for him, but it was just a stunning shot from
Mm.
Cordova, and I think really kind of opened people's eyes to be like, "Oh, this guy could be some if we put him in more central positions
Yeah.
because he has a thunderbolt on him if he catches the ball sweetly." So overall, I think really good experiment and really good showing from York United, especially in possession and in the attack. Vancouver FC again suffered from a slow start
Mm.
away from home. Really, I mean, they got the goal back a few minutes afterwards. I think that's what woke them up to be like, "Oh, right, we're playing a football game."
Yeah.
And really, again, really well taken goal from Diaz. In transition,
Mm.
Diaz got the ball. Is almost like half of his back was facing away from goal, but still, like he could have tried to hit
Mm.
it, faked it, took it out more, got a little bit more on it, and then I don't know if Vincenzini was expecting somebody to block it, but he didn't
Yeah.
move, and it
Yeah.
wasn't like it was like Cordova's where it thunderbolted it, and it kind of just kind of like
Mm.
curled in
Yeah.
at a
I know what you mean.
leisurely pace,
Yeah.
and he didn't move at all. So I don't know if it was a sort of similar thing where like Diaz tricked him with his eyes or the shot,
Yeah.
or if he was expecting a block or something.
Yeah.
But it
I
could
mean,
have
I
just
watched that and I was like thinking like, right, where's the deflection then? Just like
mm,
when they shoot, and then they show it back. I'm like, okay, there wasn't a deflection. So what's happened here? Because this doesn't seem right.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, regardless, good for Vancouver. But even still, afterwards, didn't really feel like they were trying to get a hold of the game until the second half, where they made some subs,
Mm.
where they made subs. Like I think it was like Thomas Powell came in, Sebastian Chakowski, the two U Sports draft picks that
Yeah.
came in, Zach Verhoeven and Ben Fisk, obviously the big one because Ben Fisk was the one that won the penalty.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until they came in that I started to feel like, okay, Vancouver are actually trying to win a game, get back into the game,
Mm.
and likes about. And like it's just mystifying for me, and I'm curious to see what you think of like why is it that they're so good at home,
Yeah.
in starting games well and trying to get control of the game and being organized and structured in the defense and being more lethal in the attack. But away from home, it takes being a goal down, or it takes until the 60th or 70th minute for them to wake up and be like, oh yeah, we're quality. We're not the Vancouver FC from last season.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but yeah, they miss home. They get homesick easy.
Yeah, that must be it.
That's all I can
BC
imagine.
is a wonderful place to live if you can afford it. So that must be it. That must be. They
That's it. It's
miss
just
home.
BC snobbery going across to all these other areas.
Yeah, they just think they're better than everybody else.
Exactly. There's Ben Fisk with his wonderful hair, just strutting
Yeah. Oh, what a that is a one handsome man. Look at him. Great player, handsome man as well. But yeah, it was just weird for me to watch that match because Vancouver FC didn't feel like they really did all that much until the
No.
last 20 or 30 minutes, and even after Ngabi mentioned afterwards, it was like, I wish I could bottle that up and use that for the entire 90 minutes for everything going forward. It's just sort of, I think it mystifies him, let alone
Yeah,
us. It
that's it.
mystifies him of why they can't get it, because you look at the way, especially the way they ended, they looked like more of the team that was going to go on and win. Like even before Dyer's penalty shot and afterwards, and you look at the stats, and even though it was 2-2, York had an XG of 0.21. Well, Vancouver an XG of 1.29. So both of them outperformed the XGs, but York was far and away outperforming their XG.
Yeah.
And Vancouver, it was just like they weren't able to get themselves into those high quality opportunities to produce high quality shots, and until sort of the very end. And obviously it wasn't their usual starting 11. They had Paris G at center back, which is I think that was the first time that we saw him start a game at center back and not at wing back. Instead, it was James Cameron at left back. Grady McDonald came in for 54 minutes. He looked pretty decent. He just I don't know. He didn't get on the ball enough for me, but defensively, he looks like somebody. He's Irish. He's always gonna get stuck in. He loves a good challenge. It's in
And
his
he's
blood.
16, so he's not
Exactly.
gonna play perfect every game.
Hormones are raging, so they have to be. They have to be, expressed in some manner. And Kembo Kibato also started the match as well, so it was a little bit of a different lineup, and it felt like it in the way that they started.
Yeah.
But for me, and another thing I wanted to ask you, when I look at this Vancouver side, I can see what they're good at, and I can see that there are some things that they're like excelling in certain situations. But compared to other teams, I still am not sure what they're actually like great at. I'm still not sure about are they a team that is fantastic attacking in transition, similar to Ottawa? Are they a team that are fantastic when they're dominating matches and pulling players out of position in the way that Forge and Cavalry are? Or are they a team that love to crawl, take advantage of space in behind, in the wings, cross balls, dangerous balls into the box for strikers like Cavalry is, fluid like Halifax? I still don't know what Vancouver necessarily are great at that I can define as this is the Vancouver FC way, because it just feels like sometimes you can see good movements, and some individual brilliance. Is like Moses Dyer. It was night and day, him being in the match day squad and him not being in the match day squad. I think it's so important for Vancouver FC as that focal point up top. I think Diaz also benefits from him because Moses Dyer takes up so much of the attention because he's just everywhere and he's just working so hard that Diaz is able to kind of sneak in behind into those spaces and get those opportunities. But aside from that, what are Vancouver FC like great at that you could be like, that's what they're known for?
Yeah, I mean, watching these games, and like, this is going to sound like I'm having a dig, but I don't mean it in that way. Like, I mean it in a really positive way. They turn games back into like it's a pickup game, because Vasco Fry, Renan Garcia will just like they'll and they'll be competitive in the midfield, but they've got quality. Like, but they will just try and bully players and they'll piss people off. Like they'll like, and Moses Dyer, like I said it all season, he's just a pit bull that's just aggressively running at players, and they get into a position, and when they get their points and when they're playing at home especially, you can see them just dominating players at times and just really making players doubt what they're doing in the opposition, because they're just under so much pressure, and they're just like, they're trying to be the bigger kids in the playground, like, and picking on the younger ones almost. They're trying to turn it into that kind of game. But they've got more to them. But too often, I think that's what I'm seeing. Like, because defensively they're not like that. They are actually quite organized. But sometimes I'm seeing, well, if Dyer can't, if he's left a bit on an island and players are passing around him, then what are Vancouver going to do to try and get back into the game and try and get the game going in the way they want to play? And they're the bits I miss at the moment. And that does sound like, it sounds like I'm being really critical, but I really don't mean it that way, because they're so effective when they can get that game going. They do look like they're 3 years older in the playground playing against all these teams, like when they get it working exactly right. But sometimes if it comes out of that way, they're still, and when they've had to make this amount of changes, it takes them a little while to like try and work out how to get back into the game, which is why maybe they're more strong as the game finishes.
Yeah. No, I think, and I understand where you're coming from. It does feel like at times it's just they've brought in a lot of quality, and that quality from the players shines through, and you can see the chemistry that they're building through it. But I'm still not seeing, and I think if I understand you correctly, it's also like there's not this overall kind of like identity of like, this is the way that we play, sort of regardless of who's playing. They're very much structured around, well, we need these players and we need them to play well together to be able to make the moves and to make the plays that make them really good.
It's not working exactly right. How do we get it to work right again? That's the bit I think they're still working out themselves, because they've learned the new system. They've learned how to press and be aggressive. But when it's not working, it's like, how do we get it to work? They're still, that part's still in process. I mean, we're very early on in year 2 of their existence.
No, of course, that's the thing, right? Where it's like, and it's not only like
they have
so many new players as well. Like just in the way that they've recruited and everything, and they have a lot of quality now. They have to learn how to deal with it, and they have to figure out what if this quality is in what if there is no Moses Dyer this week? What are we going to be able to do? Figuring out these plan Bs kind of things, I think, is going to be the next big step for Afshingapi and for Vancouver FC, is how to play well, even if you don't have some of the other, if you don't have Renan Garcia or Vasco Fry or Moses Dyer or Gabby Batar, how are you going to still play well? That's where you kind of see the system shine through rather than the individuals. And you don't want that quality to drop in between. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, good for them to be able to get the point from it away from home, and
that's it. They showed they could do it. Like towards the end of the game, they get like, I mean, it's fortunate that, I mean, if it didn't hit Martin Perot's hand, it was going to hit the defender sliding in behind him with his hand up as well. Like, sort of gifted, but they did look so much better, and it's showing they can do it. It's just, I'm trying to think like half of these players came in the summer transfer window last year. Like, so this team's barely been together 6 months in reality. So it's going to take them a bit of time, and like if things don't go perfectly, how do we get it going right? Like, it just takes a bit of time. That's why they're not like, if it just straight away, click of a finger, you work out how to do it, you'll be competing with Ottawa. Like, so it's no bad thing that you're still developing, like the club's still developing that system, and who knows how it'll be come 2-3 months time, like once they learn how to deal with it in game. Could be really dangerous.
And that's the thing, it's like, I think if they can figure that out in time before the playoffs, and if they can do enough to get them into a good position in the playoffs, being in the top 2, maybe the top 3,
Get some home games.
then get some home games, then we might see them really come into their own come
Yeah,
playoffs, and they might be, a dark horse for it. You never know. So
yeah,
it's
they got
still
the
it's still quite
yeah,
early for them, but they have the quality in the team to be a really dangerous side. So I'm
yeah,
expecting them to come good soon. But maybe that's a romantic in me again.
definitely. I mean, they could. Yeah, I think they look really, really good when they're on form, and when things aren't going quite right, like it's still new. Like you can forgive them. Like watching this team, like, it's really exciting. They're an exciting team in this league. Like they've been a really good addition.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see what happens then. And then for York, I mean, this new era that they have on their Benjamin Mora, pretty decent start. Excited to see what happens as the weeks go on and we start to see more of what his identity is for this York side and how he can manage some of
Yeah.
these big tempers and big
Oh yeah.
egos.
No sendings off. None of his staff got sent off.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a good start.
yeah. It looks like turning a new leaf. Turning over a new leaf for York United. Already in my good books on that.
The dugout hasn't been smashed to pieces. Like it's fine.
Yeah, no
It's
bottles
all
thrown, no chairs
trajectory.
kicked.
Turn up.
Exactly. Great, clean game. But yeah, that is it for our recap. Thank you so
On
much
that
for
note.
listening in. On that note, yeah, for listening into this week's podcast episode. We hope that you enjoy it. Make sure to follow us once again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, so you can give us your thoughts on each of this week's episodes and what you thought about our antics that we got up to on this one. And yeah, if you have a comment or question that we like, we might give you a shout on the next show. We will try to be a little bit more engaged on social media in the coming weeks,
Definitely,
and we might have some big news coming up, or we might have some changes in the works for the podcast in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. But as always, until next time, I'm Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And there's been Coast to Coast FC signing it.